All right, everybody, back with another one. Today we're going to take a look at an interesting thing that I discovered when I was watching Dr. Ben Carson as a guest on the Shawn Ryan show. Um, I'm sure you're probably familiar with Dr. Ben Carson. He's a world-renowned neurosurgeon, and there was a movie made about him, Gifted Hands, where Cuba Gooding Jr. Played him. It's a great movie, and he actually was the Secretary of HUD under Donald Trump during his first term. Super reputable, well-known man. If you haven't seen his documentary, Gifted Hands, or read his book, I highly, highly recommend it. Excellent book, great movie, and the documentary as well. The feature film was also really good too, but there was a documentary and that was really good also. Um, but it was interesting, something that he said on that podcast. So we'll take a look at that today. We'll dive into that a little bit, and we're gonna just take a look at a clip from the podcast, not the whole podcast. If you do want to watch the whole episode, go and watch it on Shawn Ryan's channel. Um, and we're going to take a look at all of that today and dive a little bit into that. And it kind of it piggybacks off of what I was talking about in my episode, I think like 2 episodes ago when I did the JFK files. And I kind of spoke about how um, a lot of things tie back to when John F. Kennedy was assassinated. Um, right around that 1963-64, year time frame was when there was a shift in America. And, many people believe different things. They believe, there were these conspiracies with the government. Some people believe that it's spiritual and that, once Kennedy was assassinated, there was a curse put on America. And, that curse is being lifted now today. So we don't really know exactly, what everything, um, what caused all of this and why it happened to America. But if you're a Christian, you probably would agree that it's likely because America moved away from God. And when we did that, maybe there were elements of a curse put on this nation and its people. That's why in the Bible it does also talk about how, if you repent for your sins and turn back to God and turn away from your wicked ways, He will heal not only people but their land. So there is definitely something there to nations being cursed because of their actions, especially of turning away from God. And that's really what we've seen in this country over the last, 60 plus years, this downslide of us going from being the most prosperous um, nation and superpower in the world in world history to being um, a nation in decline where it just seems like everything got worse year after year for the people. And you could look back in history, or even just, with people that like if you look at all the generations today, right? You pretty much just have very small amount of the silent generation still alive. There's maybe a handful of the greatest generation still alive. That's the generation before them. And then the baby boomers, that's the predominant older people generation today. Um, that's up to people in their late 70s. And then you have Gen X, Gen Y, which is the millennials, and then Gen Z. Gen A Alpha is being born today, but Gen Z is like the last group of people that are actually adults now and they're going out into the world. So you have, Gen X, Gen Y, and Gen Z are all saying, how life has just gotten worse over time and how, things used to be better when they were younger. And I think everybody's kind of aware that there's a downhill, that America was going downhill for the last several decades. So I'm not going to dive too much into that in this episode because I already discussed it in my previous episodes, episode 63 and 64. If you have a chance to take a look at those, there's a lot of great information there. It kind of breaks down over the decades, especially in the episode 63 with the JFK files. I break down um, the decades, like season 60s and 70s and 80s and 90s and 2000s of how America went from being the greatest nation to where we are today and why everything went downhill. It all was kind of hinging on the assassination of JFK. So we'll look a little bit more about something that ties into that today, but we won't go into the JFK conspiracy stuff as much, or if at all. So take a look at that episode because it's actually really good. Even though the files are out now, the episode I think put in there, I think a lot of information of like the big picture that I don't know if many people have spoken about who've dived into the JFK files. And then also take a look at episode 64. I talked about some steps that you can take if you're an aspiring Christian or if you are a Christian and you're looking to get, stronger in your faith and live a better life. You know, not everything is, I guess, what they teach in church today or in the schools. Um, there are kind of simple, easy things that you can do that they may not feel easy in the moment, but they're clear steps that you can take to actually, become a better Christian and uh, allow yourself to escape, sin and temptation in your life. And they're very easy in the idea of how to, what to do and how to do, how to take those steps. And I even wrote a like a how-to guide on how to do this. That's actually available right now on Gumroad, and the link to that is in the show notes for probably every episode now going forward because I think it's really beneficial resource. But it's in definitely in episode 64's show notes. So if you're interested in that, it's not for everybody. If you're not a Christian, totally understandable. If you're not looking to become a Christian, totally understandable. No hard feelings. This is really just specifically for people that would find it beneficial to, maybe take a look at what are some active things, active steps that I can take in my daily life to, become a better Christian and live a better life, a more righteous life that's pure and, good. And I talk about how it's not like, how to become a priest or a nun and live this, you know, very confined life of Christian sorrow. That's not what that is. What I put together was a instruction manual for how to, live a better life as a Christian, but also thrive, also live a great life, also be happy, have fun, have peace, have joy, have love, have all these great things in your life, and not have some boring life that lacks, adventure and excitement, but instead getting to really enjoy the things that God has put here for us and actually getting doing these steps will hopefully help you um, see the brighter side of life and allow you to actually enjoy your life even more than the life that you live when you're, partaking in all your sins. So I really dive deep into that in episode 64, and I think I do a decent job at kind of breaking it down. But I'm always open to your comments. You could definitely comment on that video. But the PDF is available, like I said, on Gumroad. So take a look, and if that's something that interests you, get it there. But that is going to be, it. And we're going to jump into this now. We'll take a look at the clip from the Shawn Ryan show with Ben Carson, see what he had to say, and then we'll dive into deeper a little bit of what they were talking about.
We've changed as a country just in the last 30 years. Things are going on now that no one would have imagined 30 years ago. And sometimes the country is hardly recognizable anymore. But I don't think that's the way that the majority of Americans want it to be. And one of the things that we've been trying to do is get people to wake up, particularly people of faith. It doesn't have to be that we're denigrating marriage anymore. It doesn't have to be that we're mutilating little children and taking advantage of the fact that they're very suggestible and very curious and doing things to them that will ruin their lives forever. Those things don't have to be. We don't have to have men playing in women's sports. All of these things are eroding our moral fabric. And that's exactly what those who want to fundamentally change us want. If you look at the congressional record from January the 10th, 1963, Congressman Herlong of Florida read into the congressional record the 45 goals of communism in America. And they included all of those things, gaining control of the schools and the teacher union so you can indoctrinate the kids, gaining control of the media and Hollywood so you change the culture of America, making sexual perversion normal, natural, and healthy, denigrating the role of the family, elevating the role of government. It's all in there. And we need to understand that we're under attack and we have to fight back.
Who do you think is orchestrating all of this?
There have been people who have been opposed to the American way and American values since the very beginning. The Europeans thought that we were crazy. They said, you can't run a nation on the will of the people. You have to have a monarch. You have to have a ruler. But in today's world, we have to contend with the factions that still believe that socialism and communism is a better way of life. That you give control of your life over to others who will guarantee that they will take care of you from the cradle to the grave. Even though it's never worked anywhere else, there are still those who push that and will continue to push it. And they've gained a lot of momentum. You can see how a lot of the college students seem to be taking that as something that is good. And I don't think that they really understand what socialism and communism is. And they don't really understand how good they have it in this country and what the opportunities are in this country for success. But we have to continue to fight that fight and bring people to the point where they actually will look at the data, will look at what has happened historically, will look around them and see who really has their best interest in mind and who is utilizing them. And I think that's a fight that's worth engaging in.
What do you think the most effective way to fight this is?
Education. One of the things that you'll notice that the leftists in this country do is they shield people from information. You'll notice that the mainstream media did a very good job of keeping people away from the knowledge of what was going on. I remember coming back from the airport and I asked the limo driver what his thoughts were about Hunter Biden's computer, his laptop. He didn't know anything about it.
Yeah, see, that's an interesting point that he's making. For the longest time, the liberals, the Democrats, were always known as being the academics, were known as being the ones that were pro-education, and there was always this like stereotypical, way of looking at conservatives, especially like middle America, as though they're these dumb people, Hicks or whatever, that had no education. They either didn't go to college or high school or dropped out of high school or only had a GED or something. And so there was this like stigma that um, if you lacked education, you were an idiot, and you were the reason why America was in bad shape. But if you look at things now, the liberals, those same people, are the ones that are saying everything that's on the internet is bad, and you shouldn't listen to these conspiracy theories and only listen to what the news puts out. And they're doing everything they can, even in schools, they're pushing back against people doing their own research online, and instead, listening to what the instructors and the professors tell the students and what's in the textbooks that are like 100 years old, or, whatever. They're very anti open education. They want centralized education where they tell you what the facts are and you accept them whether you like it or not, and you don't go look elsewhere. That's why, like, there's a lot of bad things about everything in life, but there's also a lot of good things too. Like, everything has a good and a bad. That is kind of true, that old Chinese adage of like yin and yang. There is good and bad with everything, and even social media and the internet. There's a lot of bad with that, and we can go into that in depth in other episodes. But there's also a lot of good that it did. It kind of gave the people a tool and a resource to be able to bypass the centralization that the government had set up in all these different areas, in the government itself, in education, in the medical industry, and all these different things. And it gave the people the ability to challenge the mainstream channels and networks that had all the power and control and all the viewership you know? So there is also good that came out of it. It's not all bad. There are some people that are like, they hate the internet, they think social media destroyed the world, and elements of it did, but really, nothing destroys anything except people. People destroy things. Um, Social media is just a tool. It can't destroy anything. It's how people use it that make it either good or bad. Um, and that goes with everything, by the way. But what he's saying is so true. Um, the left is famous for bashing actual education, actual knowledge, actual facts, and they try to belittle everything as though it's stupid. But these are the same people who um, would say that, Republicans or middle America conservatives were stupid because they lacked education. So it's this weird hypocritical thing where uh, they're against not being educated, but they're also not, happy with people being self-educated. So it's this weird dynamic, but he's making a good point because there is a hypocrisy there. They just want to control the education. That's really what it comes down to. But we'll go more into, this maybe in a bit.
Didn't know. It was a complete shock to hear about that. And a lot of these children that you see on these campuses uh, rallying for Hamas and against Israel, they don't know anything. They're shouting about the river to the sea. They don't know what river. They don't know what sea. They don't know what the whole conflict is all about. They are manipulated because they're ignorant. And ignorance is bliss for the left because ignorant people are easy to manipulate.
What about raising your kids?
What about?
I mean, I don't know. I think that one of the ways that I think it's going to be a long turnaround, if we turn it around.
Mhm.
It seems like we're doing, making leaps and bounds right now, but we've seen that pendulum swing
Sure.
really far right and really far left. There doesn't seem to see much balance.
Right.
And so I guess what I'm saying is I believe it's a generational fight. And you have 3 sons. How old are your sons?
41, 39, and 37.
Do they have kids?
They all have children. Yep.
And I feel like that a lot of parents have abandoned their parental responsibilities for social media.
Mm-hmm. That has happened.
They give their kids the phone. The phone raises the kid, keeps them occupied so that the parent can be on the phone. And I mean, to me, it seems, we need to get back to raising your kids, pouring into them, giving them everything you have, teaching them the values, not handing them the phone and
No question about it. And that's the reason that my wife and I wrote our last book, The Perilous Fight. the attack on the American family, combating it. And we talk about the fact that parents have to take back that responsibility. You can't leave that to the rest of the world, including social media, or you will suffer the consequences of it. You know, we only have one grandchild right now who's in adolescence, but she's wanting a cell phone, and the parents are not giving her one. They say maybe a flip phone, but they fully recognize the deleterious effects of social media, which has other objectives rather than raising patriotic, successful individuals.
I'm curious to know, what is your best piece of advice on just being a good father?
Well, the very best piece of advice would be to strengthen your relationship with God. I don't want to preach, but I have a very strong faith in God. And He's answered so many of my requests, including a request for wisdom and direction when sometimes the way looks murky, which way to go. He's never let me down. But when you have that relationship with God, it automatically improves your relationship with other people, including your spouse and your children. And you begin to understand the responsibilities that you have, particularly as a role model, as a protector, as a provider.
And so, how do they build that relationship with God? I mean, I just figured it out about a year and a half ago, and it's totally changed my life.
Yeah.
But I think for people that are new to it, they need a little bit more than strengthen the relationship. How do they communicate with God? How do they build a relationship with God?
God tells you in the Bible, He says, you will find me when you seek me with all your heart. You got to look for Him. He's not going to force Himself on you. But the word is there. There are other people there. But if you're looking earnestly for that relationship, you'll find it.
All right, so that was just a clip from the podcast. You could definitely check that out on Shawn Ryan's show. Like I said, a great episode. Love Ben Carson. Um, he is, in a world today where you have so many men that are just different than their forefathers, not as wise, lack common sense, and lack the principles of being a Christian, being Christ-like. I think Ben Carson is one of the best representations of Christ that we have today. I also think he has like that old world wisdom that you would have found in people who were like, lived during the Puritan era. And he's calm, he's rational, um, but he's also firm and assertive. He's not a weak person. I mean, it's almost unimaginable that he's, yeah, as calm as he was able to accomplish everything he's accomplished in his life. I mean, he's invented surgeries. He's invented brain surgeries that they still use in brain, surgeries and medicine today. Done made massive leaps forward in the, neurosurgery industry as a whole. But he's also like I said, his life story was turned into a movie, a documentary. He's written books, and his books are great. If you ever have a chance to, you know, if you're looking to get a couple good books that, really have, uh, wisdom, life wisdom, and are informative. I'd say he's definitely top of the list for people to go to read, good material, good books that have wisdom that you really don't get much anymore from the men today. How many people do you know um, that are uh, sort of stoic in their demeanor and in their wisdom? Think about the men in your life. Think about, the men in your family, your friends, your friends, fathers and grandfathers. How many of them do you know that still have that type of wisdom that Ben Carson has? Um, I can't think of too many outside of a few. Um, and it's sad because that's always how men used to be. They used to be, the older they got, the wiser, more reserved they would be, and they would be the, um, you know, person that you would go to in your family for wisdom to be able to be, passed on to the younger generations. And we've seen that with the greatest generation as they aged. We've seen that with the silent generation, even as they've aged. We're not really seeing that too much anymore with the boomers. They're all still kind of acting like they're, you know, kids. They're still living out their life, their youth. It's a known phenomenon today on the internet, which is, also a reflection of reality, that the millennials, who majority of their parents are the boomer generation, are not happy with their parents because they lack being good parents and good grandparents, because a lot of the millennials are having children today. We're the ones that are basically starting the Gen A, Gen Alpha generation, which I actually think is going to be one of the greatest generations in American history. But we'll have to see. It's going to take 20 years for that to come to fruition. Um, but uh, a lot of them are, you know, complaining online about how the boomer generation sucks and that they're not, great parents or grandparents, and that in their old age now they should be spending more time with their children and helping them with their kids, which is the boomers' grandkids. And instead, they're taking luxurious trips and enjoying their retirements and doing all these ridiculous things that are not that's not how you should be at that stage of your life. In the Bible, it talks about how the older generations are supposed to be, how they're supposed to behave, and how they're supposed to, pass on wisdom to the younger generations. They're supposed to be there to help them and show them the way because they already lived through those eras in their lives. And the boomer generation lacks that. So the fact that Ben Carson is a boomer, he's one of the rare few that exude that type of old world wisdom, and he kind of has he's almost like a soul that would have been one of the doctors that signed the Declaration of Independence. He was he seems like that type of person that was wise, because don't forget, like, there were many doctors that signed that document that were part of the founding fathers, um, and the original people who helped create America. There were a lot of interesting people who had multiple careers, were intelligent, did many different things in many different fields. So you kind of see that with Ben Carson today. He's like a rare find, somebody from like a throwback from the past. But anyway, if you have a chance to read his books, read his books. What he's talking about is great because it even kind of goes back to the PDF that I put out, that I was talking about earlier, where Shawn Ryan, who's a new Christian, he says is looking for like a how-to guide, like how do you find God, do you live a Christian life. That's exactly why I put that document together. I wanted to give people a resource. Now, obviously, there's one way to become a Christian, and everybody who, reads the Bible understands this. You have to accept Jesus Christ as the Messiah, as your Lord and Savior, and you have to repent for your sins, and then, turn away from your wicked lifestyle to go join Jesus on the straight and narrow path, live the new lifestyle that you're going to be living as a Christian. But a lot of people think that outside of that, either that's all you have to do, and then you could just go back to living the life that you were living, or that they don't really quite understand because it's this spiritual thing that they can't understand that side of like reality. Instead, they're stuck in like the rational world that we live in, where if I can't see it or touch it or use my five senses on it, then I don't really comprehend it. Um, this resource that I wrote is a good guide to giving people practical ways to actually implement things in their life, in their daily lives, that will help them become a better Christian, grow closer to God, and kind of fall naturally into being a Christian, even if you haven't had some crazy religious experience and you haven't, you don't have some amazing testimony of how, God came to you in a dream or you had a near death experience. Instead, this is just for the average person who realizes that they're not happy with their lives and they believe there's something to this Christianity thing. So they kind of want to explore that deeper. Get my PDF, read it, implement it in your life. And if it doesn't work, put it in the comments in the video that it didn't work. And I'll be happy to, figure something out for you with a refund or whatever. But anyway, great video. He kind of touches on what we're gonna get into today. But it's true. Like you see a lot of these, and Charlie Kirk does this with his videos, and Stephen Crowder did this, with his videos in the past, and Ben Shapiro, where they go to local colleges and they talk to the students there who are pretty much all brainwashed by the academics and liberalism, and they kind of talk to them and try to debate them and have them you know answer the most basic, simple, common sense questions that should just be inherently common sense to people, but because their brain is so um just filled with all of this uh, worldly academic knowledge, they can't see how ridiculous, even though um, they have all the right words and the lingo, and they try to sound smart, and they learn something from a professor or they read something in a textbook, and then they regurgitate it and try and act as though that was their bright idea, or um, they're so smart and wise because they have this information, even though they're just repeating and parroting something that someone else either told them or they read, rather than doing the research themselves and finding out the answers. So a lot of these like young college kids, by the way, who are so arrogant compared to previous generations. Previous generations, the younger people were inspired and they were excited and had like, they say, piss and vinegar, which is really just they had like that um, drive because now they're out of their parents' home, they're finally adults, that they wanted to like get out there in the world and make a difference. And they would maybe sometimes look at some of the adults and say, why aren't they doing anything about these, problems in the world? I'm going to get out there and I'm going to fix it. Enthusiasm. A lot of young people have that, which is great. You got to keep that throughout life. But these kids today are very arrogant. They think that the older generations are stupid and don't know anything, and that they know everything even though they're new to the world, and they're somehow going to save the world even though no one's been able to do it before except Christ. Christ really didn't even save the world. He saved the people. He saved his people. The world is fallen and it's going to continue to be fallen. So you see this with them on the college campuses, and they're having the hardest time just answering the most basic questions and comprehending common sense. So it kind of shows that the plan that these people put in place actually worked. And that's what we're going to dive into now is what Ben Carson mentioned was a congressman read the 45, principles, I think, of the, communist agenda and how they planned on using those to implement and infiltrate the United States. Now, there's so much to this. This goes back to basically even before America was founded. If you really look into your history, you have, the discovery of America with Columbus, and then the Pilgrims started coming here, and they started, basically beginning the what would become the American civilization. Then you had the Puritans, and they were the ones who brought, um, true faith and Christianity to America. And America at its core was built on the backs of those people. So if you ever have a chance to look into the history of the Puritans, really great. They've been totally, bashed in schools, and they tried to rewrite history with Hollywood movies, TV shows, making them as though they were a bunch of evil, bad people that were like calling people witches and killing them for no reason. It's all lies. Puritans were probably the greatest generation of pre-American people that had ever lived. And they might have even been the greatest generation of human beings to ever live on Earth, to be honest. But you had the Puritans, and eventually you had the colonists, people who had settled into the colonies and built them and built what would eventually become the states of America. And then from there, you had, basically Americans, people who were battling to, turn these colonies and this idea into an actual country. And that's how America was formed. And then, since then, there were people that were fighting to stop this idea coming to fruition of the people governing themselves and being the ones that have true freedom from, all forms of tyranny. And this had been tried and tested so many times in the past throughout America's history, but they finally put it into effect by declaring this nation with the Declaration of Independence and then creating the Constitution in 1789 and all that stuff. So, if you go through history, you'll see that there were so many people that tried to take this idea down from, the very beginning. So it was always in the plan for the enemy to try and destroy what God was building, which was what would become America, which is what we have now. We've gone so far off the beaten path, yes, but we are still America at our core, and we are still the dominant nation in the world because we're still blessed by God. Now, God definitely turned from us because we turned from Him. And maybe there is a curse on this nation, who knows? But I believe that we are coming back now. Now, if the people can continue to go back to God, which, like I've said in past videos, there have been countless numbers of people who, within just the last few years alone, have been baptized and become Christians, and you've even seen it with influencers or former people who work in the adult entertainment industry, and so many other people, even Kat Von D, like many people have converted to Christianity and are being saved now. So there clearly is a spiritual awakening going on in this country. And that's a great thing because that's, something that we've needed for a long time. So it seems like God is, you know, coming back and giving us grace again and blessing this nation again. Let's hope it continues. But the more people that turn back to God through Christ, the more it will happen. Life will only get better for America again. But communism was always a tool, a trick in the devil's, playbook that he was going to use to infiltrate um, America, and it finally fully officially happened in the 1960s. And that's why I spoke about in the previous video how once JFK was assassinated, that was the switch in this nation where communism took over and the American way of life and our constitutional republic really began to die. People tried before in the past, and there were definitely, arrows shot at us and they chinked our armor, but nothing really made a dent like the 1960s, the official implementation of communism in our government and in many forms with social programs, because socialism is the precursor to communism. And you have so many social programs in our country today that we still live by: unions, social security, pensions, like many different things that we copied from socialist countries. Unions came from Italy. Italy's a socialist country. Unions were brought to this country by Italians from, Italy, who implemented their socialistic ideology on our countries and our country and our people, and we still have unions today. So, and they're very much, ingrained in all industries in America. Um, so the 1960s was really that time where the shift happened. And we're going to take a look now at a couple of things. We're going to take a look at the 45, principles of communism that Ben Carson was talking about, that was actually read into the congressional record from a book called The Naked Communist, uh, that we're going to kind of break down that whole thing and show how it leads into even up until today, 2024, 25, era right now that we're in. and how it seems like it is an ongoing, fight, an ongoing battle that's still being worked out 60 plus years later. So let's take a look at those principles now. So this is the actual document. You can read it yourselves when on your free time if you choose to. But this is actually from the House.gov website, so it's officially on the government public record, and it is a legitimate, credible website because it's a government website. I'm not going to read it from here because it's a little hard to see this. We're going to read a better PDF version, but you can see here that it's exactly what Ben Carson said. It's the communist goals. Honorable A.S. Herlong, that's the congressman that he was talking about from Florida, who read this, in the House of Representatives on Thursday, January 10th, 1963, which, if you take a look at the date, that was before JFK was killed. And he read, you can read this little passage here about how he does like a little intro and talks about, what this is and how it came from. This is the current communist goals, and these are identified in The Naked Communist, a book by Cleon Skousen. Now, if you don't know who Cleon Skousen is, we're going to get to that in a minute, but you can take a look here and see all of these were put in the record, and they're listed one by one on a 2-page document all the way down to 45 right here. So that is part of the government record. That is a fact that we just proved and backed up what Ben Carson had to say. Now let's take a look at a better version on a PDF that's a little bit easier to read because that's kind of hard for me to read. But you can also find this PDF online as well. So if you can see that here, it's just a PDF. You can actually just, anytime you want to look for a document too, typically, you could just do this on, Google or any of the search engines. Just type in the title of the document and then put .pdf, and you'll almost always find a PDF version of that. Um, but this one I was able to find on a website, and this is the 45 Communist Goals as read into the congressional record. So this is the exact same document that we're going to take a look at now. And we'll run through it fast because it is 45. I don't want to spend too much time on this, but I want you to see what these are. And we could talk about a little bit about how some of them have been implemented already. But this is that whole intro that he was saying from The Naked Communist, Cleon Skousen. There it is again right there. And let's just run through these. Number one, the U.S. acceptance of So first of all, take a look at this. Specifically designed for the United States to implement these things into its system of government and our way of life. So this is a strategy. This is an actual strategy to infect this country with communism. That's really what it was. And this was going on back in the 1960s. Now you have young people on college campuses today arguing with Charlie Kirk about how, communism and socialism is great and it's misunderstood. You have Democrats. There's like an official Democrat, Socialist Democrat Party that's an actual political party in our government where people will, could run potentially as a Democrat, Democratic Socialist, I think that's what it's called, and even run for government, governor, congressman, or president under that party, and openly declaring to Americans in their constitutional republic that they are the enemy, they are a communist, and they're looking to run for government in our constitutional republic country. And, that's like the enemy saying, I am taking over, I'm conquering you, and you will now follow our way of life, even though it's contradictory to, it's actually the exact opposite of your way of life. And there are so many people who try to bring up this weird idea of like how, oh, Jesus was a socialist. And, there's nothing wrong with socialism or communism, especially if you're a Christian, you should, that's a lie. That's BS. You could even just look at something as simple as, because Jesus never actually said these words that he was, but we didn't really, they didn't talk like that back then. Um, Jesus was a carpenter. He used to sell his work to, earn a living. He would provide a service of carpentry to somebody, or maybe make something and sell it to them. But he would sell his service as a carpenter to people for money. He was a capitalist. He would make money from people for a good or service that he provided. That's capitalism. Socialism and eventually communism is when you don't do any of that. You just are a cog in a machine. The government decides how much you make. And, a lot of times they'll even just pay you to stay home and not work and just be a slave to them. So there's no truth to Jesus being a communist or a socialist at all. It's not biblical, by the way. Communism, it definitely derives from evil because the structure, the layout is antithetical to what God wants for his people. He doesn't want his people to be slaves to someone. He wants his people to be free and choose him and be his followers, be his children. So communism and socialism is absolutely evil. It's not a good thing, and it's not something that is should anyway be accepted in America. America is a constitutional republic. We need to stay that way because that's what we were designed and founded as, but also that's what God wanted for this nation's governing system. So, number one, U.S. acceptance of coexistence as the only alternative to atomic war. It's funny how they use this word even back then, coexistence, and now today you hear the liberals will constantly say coexist and they put it on their bumper stickers, and it's this idea of like everybody should be all equal and we're all, one big happy family. But it's really a communist word that they use to infiltrate the mind and the language of people who don't either believe in communism or don't really even know what it is. It's a tactic to infiltrate people, and I've talked about this in the past too, and I'm going to try and do more videos on it in the future. But language is so important. It's so important for you to actually understand language, but also understand definitions of words, because a lot of times words are used wrong, and we're not perfect. Sometimes we, even I do it where I say a word in the wrong context, and I didn't mean that word, I meant something else, but we got so used to understanding that word associated with that mean, and it's really not true. Um, you should really try and figure out or find out the correct definitions of words that you use, because you have no idea how sometimes what you're saying is not only not true, but it actually is incorrect in what you're trying to get your message across to be and what you believe. And if you believe in, you know, language and the biblical context of how that's has power, um, words can actually put curses on people. They can, this is what people in the occult do. They use words to put curses on people. Words can not only curse someone, and put bad, let's just say call it energy, negative energy onto them. It can also put it on yourself. If you're always talking down about yourself, talking bad about yourself, um, you talk bad about your children, saying that they're, uh, won't amount to anything, or that they're not good or whatever, that will take a toll on their psyche, and it will also take a toll on their soul. So you got to really be careful as to how you use language, and not just with others, but with yourself too. But anyway, I've just that stood out to me because that word has become so popular over the last few years again. But this was a word that they used back then in the 60s, and the communists actually used it. Number two, U.S. willingness to capitulate in preference to engaging in atomic war. Now, don't get me wrong. Some of that stuff is understandable for why they wanted that back in the day, because at that time we were post World War II. We had already had an atomic bomb, and that whole thing with Hiroshima. So there was a lot of people who were very afraid of us getting into another nuclear war, and people still talk about that today. So it clearly is a very understandable fear of people that we don't want to see the world end with everybody, shooting missiles off to each other and blowing up the planet. I don't think that's ever going to happen, because that's not what God laid out as the ending in Revelation for the world. So I don't think that is our ending, but it doesn't mean that it won't happen one day where nukes do go off and kill large numbers of people. We don't know. But number three, develop the illusion that total disarmament by the United States would be a demonstration of moral strength. You see how they carefully and cleverly use words to try and appeal to specific groups of people? They're saying that disarmament, taking away your arms, right? Your firearms, your weapons, your ability to defend yourself and your family, is not only a good thing that should be implemented in the governing system of this country, but it would be a moral strength. So it's almost like somebody who tries to use like reverse psychology on somebody and say, oh, you're not yeah, you're not that moral. You're not a good Christian. Oh yeah, why? Because you still have your guns. If you really believed in, God, wouldn't you believe that he would protect you and you wouldn't need a gun? They'll try and play those like psychological games, reverse psychology or whatever, where they try and convince you to accept something that is inherently evil, all by you know, playing with the heartstrings on your pride and your ego. So you you have to be mindful of that stuff. It's a trap. It's better to just say, no, that's okay. If you think that I'm not moral because I want to keep my guns to protect me and my family, then that's fine. You can continue to think that. I'm still going to do it, and I will answer to God for having a gun to protect my family. That's between me and Him. If He says I shouldn't do it, He will, through revelation, reveal to me that it's time to give them up. But until then, I'm going to keep them. If you didn't have an ego, you would respond in a similar way to that. But many people, you know, maybe have been affected by this and thought, yeah, it is a moral strength. We shouldn't need these guns. We're a Christian nation, right? It seems like a mind game there, but they've been trying to take the guns and the arms from people since this country, was founded, because that is the only thing that stands in the way, obviously besides God, of a tyranny, of a corrupt government conquering the people and enslaving them, or at least making them live by a new set of rules and laws. Uh, that's the thing that is like the fail safe. If the government tries to come after us and take all of us and enslave us or conquer us or take us all out because we want to obey them, we have one last trick in our bag to defend ourselves and have a shot at freedom again. And that's the arms. That's why it's our Second Amendment right to have that. Well, the communists have been trying to take that away since forever. And it's even here on this document in the 60s. They've always been trying to go after the guns because they know that stands in the way of the people becoming slaves and becoming conquered by communism. Also, too, it says develop the illusion that total disarmament. So, they're obviously the person who wrote this, he's not a communist. He's anti-communism, but he's wording it in a way where he's making it understandable to Congress at that time that this was intentionally a trick. This was not something that they believed even in or to be true. The communists intentionally wanted to do this on purpose, and they knew they had to trick the people into accepting it because they couldn't willingly convince them to give up their guns. Naturally, they had to manipulate and trick. Number 4, permit free trade between all nations, regardless of communist affiliation and regardless of whether or not items could be used for war. Well, guess what? We already follow that today. We do business with many different countries that are, socialistic and communistic, and China is probably the biggest one. We do majority of our trade with China. China makes more products for America than America does for itself. So we've completely capitulated to a communist country. And number 4 has actually come to life. We're living by that now. Number 5, extension of long-term loans to Russia and Soviet satellites. Um, we are undergoing all kinds of crazy stuff with Russia right now, with Trump in office and the whole situation with the Ukraine war and the tariffs and many things like that. So we'll see how that plays out. But Russia's always been a big player, and they're probably always going to continue to be. It's most likely because their culture and their country, in even though it's taken many different forms. At one point it was the Soviet Union, Russia, and things before that. Um, it's been around a long time. The people have lived there for a long time. It's been a place where people inhabited for a very long time throughout history, and it is the biggest landmass in the world. It's the biggest country. With the landmass within the borders of that country is the largest in the world. Russia is the biggest country by square mileage out of any other country in the world. So they're always going to be a big player, and they're always going to be an ally or a threat to America. Provide American aid to all nations, regardless of communist domination. Look at everything that we're going through right now with U.S. aid and Doge and all that unmasking that Elon Musk has been able to do, and how it shows we're giving so much aid to all these other countries. Well, if you look here, that was a communist plan to drain America of its money and its wealth and its riches so that they could take us down. They could conquer us because America was too powerful for any nation to be able to conquer us militarily, because even after the military failed, all the people had guns. So you'd have to kill all the military with all of their weapons and their super intelligence, and then also kill all the people. But at that point, you end up losing anyway because you wanted to conquer this nation, but the nation's all dead now. So you really have nothing left to conquer except just take the land. So that is a losing battle. The only way to take America down is to take it down from the inside out. And the best way to do that is to morally decay the nation and then conquer it with bad ideologies. And that's exactly what communism has done over the last 60 plus years. Grant recognition of Red China, admission of Red China to the UN. I think that's already been accomplished. We know that. Set up East and West Germany as separate states in spite of Khrushchev's promise in 1955 to settle the German question by free elections under supervision of the UN. Prolong the conferences to ban atomic tests because the United States has agreed to suspend tests as long as negotiations are in progress. Allow all Soviet satellites individual representation in the UN. Also notice a lot of this too goes down to the UN, which we've finally been able to admit, especially with Trump, that the UN was a way of like conquering America from a governmental level. The UN is kind of like the government of other governments. And since we're a part of the UN, and they have a building in New York, and we have ambassadors from other countries coming to our country, and all these crazy things, we've already let another government conquer our government, and that's the UN. We shouldn't even be involved in the UN. We are our own private country. We don't need a government governing our government. The people govern our government. That's what makes us a constitutional republic. Promote the UN as the only hope for mankind. If its charter is rewritten, demand that it be set up as a one world government with its own independent armed forces. Some communist leaders believe the world can be taken over as easily by the UN as by Moscow. Sometimes these two centers compete with each other as they are now doing in the Congo. So just, think about that. Think about how crazy that is. They've openly admitted that this is their, plan in many different forms and ways. But, he wrote it here in this book, and now it's being read to Congress. So a congressman is saying, this we believe to be true as members of your government, we believe this to be true, and we're putting it into the congressional record. They had a plan for 60 plus years to have a one world government, and the UN was the way to do that. They are the one world government. So people keep thinking, oh, we're going to have this one world government, we're going to merge all these other countries, and we're going to just form a new government. The UN is the one world government. That's the government that they already set up as a one world government. Now they're just trying to get all these countries to agree. The UN makes the final decisions for each of their nations. That is a one world government. We already have it in place. Resist any attempt to outlaw the Communist Party, do away with all loyalty oaths, which, is exactly what America was founded on. Continue giving Russia access to the U.S. Patent Office. That's an interesting one, which probably has to do with military weapons and things like that that are created that they patent. If another country has access to that, which why would they have access to our patent office, right? They have their own. They could access the military weapons and technologies that we're coming up with that we're patenting that maybe they're not putting on the open market because they don't want people to, see that information. They are, going to be able to see that stuff and peek behind the curtain into what we are working on as a nation, which would only better their defenses against us or their, ability to attack us. Capture one or both of the political parties in the United States. They did that. Look at the Democrats. They are the only party to have a socialist subset of their main party, Democratic Socialists. They already did this. And this was a plan from 60 plus years ago. They've done it. They've conquered a political party. And it even says capture one or both. They tried capturing the other one, but Trump got in the way with the MAGA movement. So that wasn't successful. But they've already conquered one of them. So their plan worked. They only wanted one. Use technical decisions of the courts to weaken basic American institutions by claiming their activities violate civil rights. Look at the whole civil rights movement. That all came out post JFK getting assassinated. And when Lyndon B. Johnson came in, he did all that stuff. He said all that stuff up officially. And there's a lot of that stuff that Donald Trump is trying to repeal today. He's trying to undo a lot of that. Get control of the schools. Bingo. They did it. Look at how left the schools are. Majority of academic staff members, whether it be professors or deans or whatever, majority of them, depending on the subject that they teach, 80+% at least votes Democrat. That's a huge problem. It should be 50-50 at the bare minimum. I mean, it really should be more conservative leaning than anything because they're blue collar workers and it makes more sense for them ideologically to line up with conservative values based on an economic standpoint. But they are majority voting Democrat because the Democrats conquered the teachers' unions. And that is what the teachers care about most because that's their pockets, right? So they did this. They got control of the schools and used them as transmission belts for socialism and current communist propaganda. Soften the curriculum, get control of teachers' associations, and put the party line in textbooks. It's so funny. They wrote this years ago in the 60s. They did all of this, and we're literally witnessing it and living through it today. And that's part of the reason why Donald Trump is trying to end the Department of Education, get rid of that and bring all the education back to the states. It's not because he doesn't want the government running from a federal level the education system. It's because he saw that communism had conquered the um, school system, and the only way to fight against that was to give it all back to the states so that communism couldn't collectively conquer all the states. It would have to go in and conquer each one because now the states have the right to do things differently in each state based on what the residents of those states want. So this is going to undo what the communists did by conquering the schools over the last 60 years if Donald Trump does officially end the Department of Education. Gain control of all student newspapers, use student riots to foment public protest against programs or organizations which are under communist attack. What do the college kids on the campuses do today? They protest, they riot, they have all kinds of rallies, screaming about, how, whatever socialist things that they're planning or talking about need to be accepted in the school system and also in the rest of the country. It's, wild. But they basically militarize these people as like a arm of the Democrat politicians and the Communist Party. They have like a militia basically of people on their side that they can use to go out and create havoc and try and intimidate the American people into giving into their communist ideas. Infiltrate the press, get control of book review assignments, editorial writing, policymaking positions. They did this. Look at the mainstream media. Everybody knows it's completely controlled, and it's basically controlled by a handful of not only companies but people as well at the top. That's why I say not everything is a bad thing. The creation of the internet, social media, and then YouTube and now, awesome things like Rumble and other platforms is not just a bad thing because people, maybe abuse it too much. They consume too much content or they, waste their time posting nonsense, stupid stuff on there when they could be doing more constructive things. Think about how much good came out of it. It gave us finally a chance to take back the media and the narrative that the people get to, hear and learn about from these people who conquered the press. They actually did this. If it wasn't for social media and the internet, we would have no ability to fight back against the fact that the communists have already conquered the press, in control of key positions in radio, TV, and motion pictures. I mean, we all know about this. We all know about Hollywood. We all know about how, there's so many agendas in their movies and their TV shows, and they've completely done this. This was a plan, but they actually did it. It worked. Again, thank God for the invention of the internet and social media to give the people a fighting chance to take back the narrative from these, big conglomerates. Continue discrediting American culture by disregarding, no, degrading all forms of artistic expression. An American communist cell was told to eliminate all good sculpture from parks and buildings, substitute shapeless, awkward, and meaningless forms. Look at what they did with art. How many times have you gone to an art institute or a building or somewhere, a park or something, where there's like an art piece that looks like nothing. It looks ridiculous. And they try to tell you it's abstract and you have to use your imagination to see what you see it as. And really, it was just a communist plan to get rid of the humanity and God that was in the art before. You can't compare Michelangelo's painting of the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel with, some of the nonsense that you see at the Met. I mean, even one year, uh, somebody won the some sort of award or something for, or it was like a highest bidder in the millions for an art installation that was a banana duct taped to a wall, and the artist, it was a joke. It was like a big slap in the face to art. And then, which kind of is funny because it's so ridiculous that you're an artist and you love art, but your art is slapping art in the face. It's so weird. It's such a weird world to be in the art scene today, coming from that mindset. But it was so ridiculous that the guy who bought it actually ate the banana right after he bought it. So he basically bought nothing because he ate it and it was gone. It's ridiculous, but that's what they've done to art today. That's why a lot of sculptures and things like that are just ridiculous nonsense that have no meaning behind them. They're meaningless. It's a way to take God and humanity out of the art to kind of kill the beauty of it. Control art critics and directors of art museums. Our plan is to promote ugliness, repulsiveness, and meaningless art. And I kind of think like there are some people who, speculated that that was what Andy Warhol was put in for. Like maybe he was like a part of the CIA, like an agent or something, or, somebody where um, his mission was to go and make art meaningless and like ridiculous. That was like this whole famous thing with the Campbell soup painting. And, people tried to convince the world that that was art and that there was something cool about that. Meanwhile, it was just a way to like kill art, kill and take the humanity out of art, like I said. Um, but there were many artists throughout history that um, their it was like their sole mission of being an artist was to create art that killed art. So it was like self-destructing. Very strange. Eliminate all laws governing obscenity by calling them censorship and a violation of free speech and free press. And we can see that they've clearly done this today. Break down cultural standards of morality by promoting pornography and obscenity in books, magazine, motion pictures, radio, and TV. This is one of the most um, silent things that I don't think a lot of people talk about today, and it's radicalized feminine sexuality, and it's romance novels. Most people aren't talking about this today because I don't think most people read books anymore. But we all know about the pornography, like the major porn websites. I won't mention any of them here. Um, and magazines like Playboy, which I will mention, but that's just because I think it's the number one magazine that everybody knows as being a pornography magazine. And of course, movies have gotten worse and worse over the years, to the point where people, like, there was even a movie one year where um, I believe. I can't remember the exact thing, but it was like it was all over the news about how like Shia LaBeouf, I think, had a full-on sex scene in the movie, but it was just a feature-length film. It wasn't a porn film. It wasn't like a leaked porn film like some of these celebrities do. And that's how bad and degraded feature films have gotten today, where people are literally doing that. Like I almost envision a time where it may be possible in the future that the quality of the lack of humanity in movies becomes so bad. I would not be surprised if they actually begin murdering people in movies just for the art of it, and people volunteer to be like that person that gets killed in the movie, but not in the movie, in real life. They actually killed them in real life, but on the screen for the movie. I envision a world where that could be down the road if art continues to become degraded like this. But the biggest thing, like I said right now, that's like the sneaking one, is female romance novels. There are so many females that are writing these hypersexual romance novels that are so graphic and so like it's basically porn on paper. Um, and women are buying these things and obsessing over them. All that's doing is degrading the women who read it. It's making their mind more open to sexual immorality. And that's why you see a lot of the young Gen Z kids today. The women are more hypersexual than the boys. and they're actually being the aggressors. They're the ones that are approaching the boys, and they're the ones that are trying to get the boys to do you know sexual things at a younger age, quicker in the relationship. Um, it's the opposite of what the norm is, and also what has been since basically the beginning of time, because men are the ones that have the testosterone and the aggressiveness. Women are now being kind of, tricked and manipulated into that mindset, thinking like a man in that way, but um, also with, tremendous sexual immorality. And so they're sort of becoming addicted to sex, or the idea of sex. And this is one of the worst things that's opening them up to it, is these female romance novels. So that's something I don't really see many people talk about today. And I think it's a conversation that should be had, not maybe as much, but close to as much as what's going on with the porn industry, and how people are trying to expose that and shut it down because of the trafficking. Obviously, that's way worse. Um, but this is another big thing for sexual immorality that, hopefully somebody will start opening up the conversation on it, and then present homosexuality, degeneracy, and promiscuity as normal. They've done that. Infiltrate the churches and replace revealed religion with social religion. Discredit the Bible and emphasize the need for intellectual maturity, which does not need religious crush. That is one of the biggest things that's happening in the churches today. It's even happening in the churches where some of the pastors and priests are openly gay or trans, and they're a pastor or a priest of a Christian church. That is completely contradictory to the Bible and to God's order of life. But they have accomplished this. And it just goes to show you that you see all these different things, right? You see all these different movements going on, all these different things that we talked about here, and you think they're all isolated. It's just those people doing that thing. No, this is a massive communist plan to take over the United States and conquer us, not just from a governmental level, but from a moral level also, and get us away from God. Because if America could go completely away from God, its people, America will fall. It's the only way America will fall, because this nation was blessed by God and founded by God. He brought Columbus here to found this land as a place for the Christians to finally call their home. It was the first time in history a land would be turned into a country that would be designated for Christians specifically. That's what America is, and that's what it was founded as, which is a big thing that the schools and the education system is trying to hide from the people. They don't want them to know that that's what America was actually founded on. That's what God's plan was for us. So they try to keep it from us in every way possible. But they have accomplished that too. Eliminate prayer and any phase of religion expression in the schools on the ground that it violates the principle of separation of church and state, which is another lie. And they've done that. Discredit the American Constitution by calling it inadequate, old-fashioned, out of step with modern needs, a hindrance to the cooperation between nations on a worldwide basis. Look at what they're doing. They've been doing this for decades, but it's getting worse and worse every year. And the college students today are so bad. They hate the Constitution. They hate America. They hate the flag. They hate everything about this nation. But what they don't realize is this is an actual communist plan, and they're being used as pawns to carry it out. Discredit the American founding fathers, present them as selfish aristocrats who had no concern for the common man. They've completely done that too. Look at, they started taking down statues and saying they're all, slave owners and stuff like that. Belittle all forms of American culture and discourage the teaching of American history on the ground that it was only a minor part of the big picture. Give more emphasis on Russian history since the communists took over. Support any socialist movement to give centralized control over any part of the culture, education, social agencies, welfare programs, mental health clinics, everything. If you notice, a lot of these industries lean left, and they have a socialistic way of thinking, and they integrate that into their work. Eliminate all laws or procedures which interfere with the operation of the communist apparatus. They've done that as well. Eliminate the House Committee on Un-American Activities. Does anybody even know what that is anymore? Probably because they did away with it and they actually succeeded with that goal. Discredit and eventually dismantle the FBI. So that's funny. Like, the communists wanted to end the FBI, but then you also have a lot of people out there that are conservatives that want to end the FBI because of how the FBI has become corrupt. and how they are responsible for many conspiracies that actually are true, and how they, have been trying to attack and take down the Trump administration, the MAGA movement. They probably infiltrated many different things throughout the last few years to try and go after conservatives. But remember, or at least now you should see, the communists also want the FBI taken down. So maybe think that the bigger plan for them is to make the FBI so bad that the people call for it to be taken down anyway. So that even if they do get taken down, the people will feel, the conservatives will feel that, we did it, we succeeded, the FBI is gone, but then you just gave the communists another win. So anytime you're about to take something down, always find out first, why was it put there? If you don't know in detail why something was put there, do not take it down. Do not remove it, because it was obviously put there for a reason. Now, if it was put there for the wrong reasons, then yes, take it down. But before you take something down, always find out why it was put there in the first place. You never know. It was probably for a reason. Um, I don't think we should take away the FBI. I don't think we should get rid of them. I'm glad, through the grace of God, and that Trump picked him. Ash Patel is the director, and then Dan Bongino is the deputy director. I think these guys are going to do a great job over the next 10 years of completely doing an overhaul on the FBI, and it might be able to be a good agency again. But I don't know if we should be doing away with it altogether. And if we do, we give the communists another win. Infiltrate and gain control of more unions. They've done that. Every union is basically liberal leaning. Infiltrate and gain control of big business. They've done that as well with many. Transfer some of the powers of arrest from the police to social agencies. Treat all behavioral problems as psychiatric disorders, which no one but psychiatrists can understand or treat. See, that's so funny. Like, there's so much in that. I can't even go to it all in this video, because it's got to do with psychology and how a lot of that's like psychobabble nonsense, but it's designed in a way where it's to make people who are less intelligent, less educated, not understand it. So they are just convinced that they don't understand it because they're not smart enough, and so they should listen to the psychiatrists inherently. And that's a problem. If a person is really that intelligent, they're going to be able to explain something very complicated to you or to anybody in a easily understandable way. If you're really that smart, you should be able to explain something super complicated to a child and make it make sense to where they actually understand it. If you can't do that, then either you're not that intelligent, or you really don't know what the hell you're talking about. And we can go into detail on this in another video, way deep, but that's for another time. But this actually worked. Look at child services. They come and will take your kid from you, which is your child. God gave you that child. It belongs to you, and you actually do own it. It is your property. Until they get to the age where they can go out in the world on their own, you're responsible for that child by God. So they allow social agencies like social services to come and actually take your kid if they so choose that you're unfit to be their parent. They have no authority to do that. But the communists won again. They got that power from the police and from the sheriffs and from the people who really hold the power of the law enforcement in the country. They took it from them and gave it to these social agencies, who now are using it against the very own people that gave it to them. Dominate the psychiatric profession and use mental health laws as a means of gaining coercive control over those who oppose communist goals. Look at what they did with everything is a mental disability now. Oh, you have a drug addiction, alcoholism, whatever. You're upset, you don't know what gender you are, whatever it is, everything to them is, well, that's a disorder and that person needs special treatment. And if you don't agree with their beliefs and ideology infiltrating your way of life, then you are the problem. And they've won that one as well. Discredit the family as an institution, encourage promiscuity and easy divorce. I mean, we don't even need to go into this one. The boomer generation, I think, has a 51% divorce rate. I mean, it keeps fluctuating, but I think that's where it was at last time I checked. But that was a while ago. They have literally split families in half to where half the country is divorced. They did it. They won. They got it. They nailed that one. and they discredited the family. How many families are broken up? Even if the parents are together, they both go to work and leave the kids in a daycare for someone else to raise them. That's a broken home. Even though the parents are still married, it's still a broken home because the children are not with the parents being raised by them. It's still a broken home. And I hate to say it in that way because I know there are some people that financially feel they can't do anything else but this. But you're actually burning more money having your child in daycare than you're probably going to uh, lose if you quit your job and stay home with your children. You know, you're gonna get that job. You have to pay taxes on that job. You have to pay for all the expenses of travel back and forth to work and everything else that's associated with your job, and then also pay for childcare. You might as well just quit the job and stay home with your children, and now you're the free childcare. But that's a topic for another day also. Encourage promiscuity. They've completely done that with people, especially young people today. An easy divorce. So that worked. Emphasize the need to raise children away from the negative influence of parents. Attribute prejudices, mental blocks, and retarding of children to suppressive influence of parents. And they've nailed this one, where they've convinced children that their own parents are the problem and that they are not they should not be the ones that have a say over them. The government or the world should. And it's just amazing how they've actually convinced not only the children of this, children are impressionable. They're going to believe anything. The parents allowed them to by not standing up against this stuff. So that's another one that the communists won. Create the impression that violence and insurrection are legitimate aspects of the American tradition that students and special interest groups should rise up and use to solve economic, political, or social problems. I mean, it hits the nail on the head when you think about all these riots that went on during Trump's time in office, and even during the 2020 era, like that whole time with the election, and then many other things over the course of the last few years. They've totally nailed that one too. Overthrow all colonial governments before native populations are ready for self-government. I mean, that's literally, they've done that as well. Internationalize the Panama Canal. Think about how crazy that one is. What is Trump reversing right now? He's taking back the Panama Canal and, calling it the American Canal or whatever. And then he's having companies come in and buy docks and do all this stuff and like trying to, take the power back from not only Panama, but China for the trade situation. And it's literally something that is on the list of the communist agenda in the 60s that was beginning to be implemented back then. Trump is reversing it right now. It's almost like Trump took this document and said, how do we undo everything on this document? And then if we do, it will save the nation. It's incredible. But the Panama Canal, it's such a specific thing. It's one thing to be like, take over the government or take over the schools or whatever. Internationalize the Panama Canal. I mean, nailed it. And just shortly after that, I think in the 70s, um, President Carter sold the Panama Canal to Panama for $1, I think it was. I have to look that up. I could be wrong, but um, this was a agenda that a sitting president helped put in place and give the communists another win. And we're literally living through this now where Trump is trying to reverse it. Repeal the Canonally Reservation so the United States cannot prevent the World Court. So there you go. This is something that they're working towards now, and I think kind of got um um it kind of got thwarted and didn't fully go through because I think the UN was working on this a while ago. They started having their own police force, and then I think the idea was to eventually have like a UN court, a UN judicial system where they're the ones who have the final legal decisions for all the countries. Like we have the Supreme Court in America at the highest federal level, and that's the court that things go to if they go through all these other courts in the country, and then it's so big it finally has to get decided on a national level. It goes to the federal Supreme Court. I think that's what they were trying to do with the UN, where that would supersede that, and now that's going to be the World Court that decides all the legal battles for all the countries in the world. and they're like the top of the judicial system worldwide. And that's the one thing on here that I could say probably fully didn't go into fruition because we don't have that. We still do. We still determine and decide legal things in America, even at the highest levels, and they stay in America. Now, some stuff does get decided, judicially, um, at an international level, and that does involve other countries as well. So I'm not saying it's not in the works and it's not currently happening. I'm just saying that that's the one thing on this list that I think if they got that last one, they might have finished this whole list, man. That might have put the nail in the coffin for America. Um, but if we could just not get to this point, we might make it as a nation. We'll see. But anyway, America has already fulfilled 90% of them, and this is back in the 60s. Even since then, we've even fulfilled them even more so over time. But I wanted you to see that because I wanted to go through the entire document and show you just how serious this is and how communism is the real enemy to America and how it actually infiltrated this country over the last 60 plus years and did so successfully, and that's what the real enemy is. And it's the big picture. It ties through all these different things, everything that's going on with the schools, everything that's going on with the medical industry, COVID, with the whole, medical tyranny thing, and then all these other, movements and programs and stuff like that. It all goes back to communism. That's what ties all this together. It's a massive plan for communism to conquer America from the inside out like a cancer. And then we fall in line really with the one world government that uh, will be the UN, will be the United Nations. That's going to be the government, the police force system, the law enforcement system, and then also the judicial system with the world court. So I wanted you to see that. You could take a look at that on your own time, but we literally read through every single one. But if you want to have it for yourself, print out, keep a copy, give a copy away to people to, especially for if you're talking to liberals, help them understand what happened, maybe pique their curiosity and give them the document, a couple pages you can print out for cents on the dollar, print out a bunch. Anytime you're debating with a liberal, say, here, this was implemented in the 1960s on the congressional record as what the communists are trying to do to America, their ultimate agenda. Read this, come back to me, and tell me that that's not what happened and that's not what's going on today. And maybe it'll pique their curiosity into looking at, hey, maybe the conservatives and the MAGA movement, maybe there is something there. Maybe there is a reason why they were trying to undo all this stuff. So anyway, we're very far into this video. I'm not going to get into everything that I was going to say, but if you want to take a look at the book too, The Naked Communist, you can go find it on Amazon. The author, Leon Skousen, if you don't know who he is, you can read about that on your own time. But he is an author, conservative, faith-based author, and he wrote that book, The Naked Communist. He was actually born, ironically, in 1913 when the Federal Reserve was put into place. And then he, later had a nephew. His nephew is Joel Skousen, who is a famous author as well. And, he's like a big survivalist prepper type guy. You've probably seen him if you've followed conservative politics and things like that in the past. He's been on some people's talk shows, especially Alex Jones, a lot over the years on InfoWars. Well, believe it or not, he's still alive today. He's actually born the same year, I think, as Donald Trump. And he ran for president in 2024 uh, with the Constitution Party, which is the complete opposite of communism, which trying to, communism is trying to take down, Constitution. Everything is actually one of their laws or agendas in the 45. And the guy who wrote the book that published this and ended up becoming part of the congressional record was born the same year as the Federal Reserve, and then his nephew was born the same year as Trump and ran for president in 2024, the same year Trump did, uh, under the Constitution Party. He didn't get any traction, obviously, and Trump eclipsed everybody. How ironic is all of that stuff that it all happened? If there isn't some divine intervention there, then I don't I don't know what that was then, because it had to be God's hand on all these things, and God does leave little clues like that all over the place. You just have to look for them. But this, yes, there is a big conspiracy. Yes, there is a plan to, try and have everything become a one world government, like people like Alex Jones and other people have been saying for years. But it all goes back to the battle between God and the devil, good versus evil, and the devil using communism to try and conquer God's people and take their freedom away from them and make them have to serve evil and turn away from God. So the moral of the story is if you keep your faith and you turn back to God, America, our land will be healed. You have to repent for your sins and turn back to Him, but then, go from there and live as a Christian. It's part of the reason why I wrote that, document that I put out there. If you turn back, you repent, you turn to God through Christ, God will save this land. God will save this nation, and we will become great once again. But anyway, this was a long video. That's it for this video. Stay tuned for the next one. Don't forget to like, follow, subscribe, share, all that good stuff. Comment in the comment section. I'd love to know what your take was on this video. And if you agree, disagree, if you have anything extra you want to add, comment it. Even if you disagree with me, I don't mind disagreement at all. You can comment that in the comment section. I'm open to a discussion. But that's it for this video. Stay tuned for the next one. All right, everybody, I just want to take a moment to promote my children's book. This is Little Boy Full of Love. That's me on the back. And this is a little sneak peek on the inside. It's a great book. It's a children's book. I actually wrote this for my son. And it's available right now on Amazon, Walmart, Barnes & Noble, Indigo, Bookshop.org, and a lot of other online platforms. But more importantly to me, it's actually available in a lot of bookstores throughout the country. You can find out which ones are closest to you on my Instagram page. We highly recommend that you shop local, buy from a local bookstore. So if you are looking to, get a children's book for you or anybody you know, or even with the holidays coming up, it's a great time to, buy a children's book as a gift. Definitely get it from a bookstore that's local to you. But if you absolutely can't get it from one of the bookstores that are currently carrying it right now, and we're in about 15 or 16 different states across the country, so it may actually be in your state and it could even be local to you. But if you can't get it from the physical bookstore, check out our Amazon storefront. The book's available on there right now. And like I said, with the holidays coming up, you may want to do your Christmas or Hanukkah or holiday shopping early, and you can even order it from our Amazon storefront and ship it directly to whoever you're gifting it to. But it's available on those platforms, Amazon storefront and bookstores and other websites that I mentioned. But I want to take a moment here to look at the storefront just to give you an idea of some other stuff that we have available on there. These are products that we highly recommend. They are things that we use in our daily lives. And it's all organized by category. So it's a lot easier to, shop for the holidays and specifically for things that interest you, particular categories. Available right now, many different items on our storefront. If you can see here, 61 items just in women's apparel, fall decor, because right now we're in fall, 26 items, kitchen items, baking specifically, things for around the house, children's toys, even stuff for parties. If you're trying to save money on a party and throwing your own, occasion, you can even buy some cool gadgets here to help you, put on a better party. Health and wellness items here, even stuff for Christmas. And there's the book right there. So you can get it from the storefront. You can get it from the bookstores, like I mentioned. But it's available on all these different platforms. It's really easy to find and gift to somebody. Also, I want to show you the apparel shop, and these are some clothing items that we actually produced. So if you're looking to get some cool apparel items, shirts, hoodies, long sleeve, short sleeve, leggings, even accessories, cell phone cases, women's makeup bags, fanny packs, coffee mugs, all different types of stuff, even some, art, all different categories here, apparel, homeware, accessories, drinks, even digital items. It's all on this store, healthybodygoodssoul.com. anything that pertains to you or somebody that you're looking to get a gift for the holidays. A lot of great designs on here, a lot of cool designs that we actually custom created. Stainless steel water bottles, especially now with the fall and winter. A lot of cool hoodies and long sleeve shirts. This is a really cool one, I think, for women. The original Be Your Soul apparel, that one's actually really popular. People tend to like that. This one's one of my favorites. The free shirt. It's the American flag and it says free and that says not property of the United States government. That one's pretty cool. Got all different types of tank tops, hoodies, long sleeve, short sleeve, tote bags, coffee mugs, even some items for kids, backpacks. So if you're the type that likes to, plan ahead, I would definitely recommend ordering from the Amazon storefront or the apparel shop within the next couple of weeks to get everything in time for the holidays. Use code SAVE15 on the apparel shop to save 15% off everything on the storefront. So order within the next week or two and you'll definitely have everything in time for the holidays. Definitely check out all the links to everything, the Amazon storefront, the book, and the apparel shop in my bio on all my platforms, Rumble, YouTube, Instagram, Spotify. But you can also find them in all the show notes for every episode that I post and get all your orders in time for the holidays. All right, that's it for this video. Don't forget to like, follow, subscribe, share, all that good stuff. It helps the channel continue to grow. And put in the comments things that you would like me to talk about and make videos on for the future. And I will definitely do my best to do that. Stay tuned for the next one.